I just heard about something that is absolutely terrifying. And, with Bitcoin shooting up in price, hitting new all-time highs, a lot of people are coming into Bitcoin because the price goes up. But I think we have to remember what Bitcoin's use case is, why it is so valuable, what's actually giving it this price boom. It's because no one can control it. We actually just saw Putin say that the other week. And what's happening right now in the world is so scary. You need some kind of hedge like this, something that you control, the government doesn't control. I actually want to show you a clip from Mark Andreessen recently on Joe Rogan, where he goes through some of the insane things that the government does, how they're manipulating you, what no one is talking about, and how the wealthy elites control you. If you don't mind, hit subscribe, turn on the bell notification underneath the video. If you want to trade crypto, there's a link to BTCC. When you use that link, you get a deposit bonus on the first time deposit. You get lower trading fees. There's no KYC, and you don't need a VPN. Now is a great time to be trading if you don't get too greedy, if you know what you're doing. But let's get over to this clip, and then I'll give you some of my thoughts on it.
And then my favorite twist is we have this thing called independent federal agencies. So, like, for example, we have this thing called the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, CFPB, which was it's sort of Elizabeth Warren's personal agency that she gets to control. And it's an independent agency that just gets to run and do whatever it wants, right? And if you read the Constitution, like, there is no such thing as an independent agency, and yet there it is.
What does her agency do?
Whatever she wants.
What does it do, though?
Basically, it terrorize financial institutions, prevent fintech, prevent new competition, new startups that want to compete with the big banks.
Really?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
How so?
Just like terrorizing anybody who tries to do anything new in financial services.
Can you give me an example?
Well, I guess, debanking. This is where a lot of the debanking comes from, is these agencies. So debanking is when you as either a person or your company are literally kicked out of the banking system.
Like they did to Kanye.
Exactly, like they did to Kanye. My partner Ben's father has been debanked.
Really?
We had an employee
for what?
For having the wrong politics, for saying unacceptable things. Under current banking regulations, here's a great thing. Under current banking regulations, after all the reforms of the last 20 years, there's now a category called a politically exposed person, PEP. And if you are a PEP, you are required by financial regulators to kick them off of your to kick them out of your bank. You're not allowed to have
What if you're politically on the left?
Well, that's fine.
No,
because they're not politically exposed.
So no one on the left gets debanked?
I have not heard of a single instance of anybody on the left getting debanked.
Can you tell me what the person that you know did? What they said that got them debanked?
Oh, well, I mean, David Horowitz is a right wing. He's pro-Trump. I mean, he said all kinds of things. He's been very anti-Islamic terrorism. He's been very worried about migration, all these things.
And they debanked him for that.
Yeah, they debanked it. So you get kicked out of your bank account. You get kicked out of you can't do credit card transactions. But by the way, you can't
How is that legal?
Well, exactly. So this is the thing, and then you go into this thing of like, well, there's no. This is where the government and the companies get intertwined. Back to your fascism point, which is there's a constitutional amendment that says the government can't restrict your speech, but there's no constitutional amendment that says the government can't debank you, right? And so if they can't do the one thing, they do the other thing, and then they don't have to debank you. They just have to put pressure on the private company banks to do it. And then the private company banks do it because they're expected to. But the government gets to say, we didn't do it. It was the private company that did it. And of course, JP Morgan can decide who they want to have as customers, of course, right? Because they're a private company. And so it's this sleight of hand that happens. So it's basically, it's a privatized sanctions regime that lets bureaucrats do to American citizens the same thing that we do to Iran.
Whoa.
Just kick you out of the financial system. And so this has been happening to all the crypto entrepreneurs in the last 4 years. This has been happening to a lot of the fintech entrepreneurs, anybody trying to start any kind of new banking service, because they're trying to protect the big banks. And then this has been happening, by the way, also in legal fields of economic activity that they don't like. And so a lot of this started about 15 years ago with this thing called Operation Choke Point, where they decided to, as marijuana started to become legal, as prostitution started to become legal, and then guns, which there's always a fight about. Under the Obama administration, they started to debank legal marijuana businesses, escort businesses, and then gun shops, just like your gun manufacturers, and just like you're done, you're out of the banking system. And so if you're running a medical marijuana dispensary in 2012, like guess what? You're doing your business all in cash because you literally can't get a bank account. You can't get a Visa terminal. You can't process transactions. You can't do payroll. You can't do direct deposit. You can't get insurance. Like none of that stuff you've been sanctioned, right? None of that stuff is available. And then this administration extended that concept to apply it to tech founders, crypto founders, and then just generally political opponents. So, yeah, so that's been like super pernicious.
I wasn't aware of that.
Oh, 100%. and this is called, so it was Operation Choke Point 1.0 was 15 years ago against the pot and the guns. Choke Point 2.0 is primarily against their political enemies and then to their disfavored tech startups. And it's hit the tech world like we've had like 30 founders debanked in the last 4 years.
Real?
Yeah. It's been a big recurring pattern.
30.
This is one of the reasons why we ended up supporting Trump. It's like we can't live in this world. We can't live in a world where somebody starts a company that's a completely legal thing and then they literally like get sanctioned.
Let's stop it there for a second. If you don't know who this is, Mark Andreessen was one of the people that created one of the first internet browsers, and worth billions of dollars, has invested in hundreds of different companies, from Facebook to LinkedIn, has a portfolio that's massive. He is one of the founders of A16Z. You might have heard of that. They make a ton of investments, and he's pretty bullish on crypto because it is another way that you can hold monetary value, but it's not controlled. Now, of course, this is a perfect example of the quote, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win, right? What he's talking about here is when they fight you. And there are many examples of this, not just in crypto, but this is one of the obvious things. We've seen so many people that even just, they were funneling money over to Coinbase, right? They did withdrawals to Coinbase from their bank account, and their bank figured that out and then shut down their account. There are plenty of examples of that in the past. Those examples to, the Canadian trucker movement, where there was no process of using any kind of court approval to shut down people's bank accounts or freeze them. They essentially enacted an emergency law where they could just move over to freeze whoever's account they wanted if they thought they were connected to the Canadian truckers or donated to the Canadian truckers via various financial applications. So, like, this has been a problem. And even, some of the things that happened with Silicon Valley Bank, right? Like, people were debanked, whether it was the government's fault or the bank's fault for being too aggressive. The fact is, Bitcoin helps this. Bitcoin helps us because you have a form of money that's not controlled at a single entity. Right, you can control your money. There's no single point there's no intermediary that can fail. If you have, let's say you're a company that has $1 million in payroll every 2 weeks. If you have a couple million in Bitcoin, not only will that help combat inflation, it will actually help you with your balance sheet. The fact is, if something happens with your bank or something else comes up, you still can send out money to the people that need it. Now, it's not super easy at this point, but at least you have a piggy bank that you can break in case something happens. So I think this is a good reminder what Bitcoin is here for. It ensures that we are not taken advantage of. It ensures that we have particular freedoms, because while we might have freedom of speech, we can also get things taken away from us, right? I own this house. Even if your house is completely paid for, if you don't pay your property taxes, it gets taken away. Bitcoin is safe. Bitcoin is scarce. Bitcoin, we look at the price all the time, but some of the properties of Bitcoin are things that you might forget over time. And now we have one. Bitcoin is going mainstream. There are countries from Russia, China, the US talking about strategic Bitcoin reserves. And that's because you can't beat Bitcoin. It's going to be adopted whether you legalize it or not. So what are these countries doing? Well, they're trying to take part in this network. They're trying to buy some of the Bitcoin. They're trying to contribute. They're trying to get control. And how do they do that? Well, maybe the best thing is to hedge. You buy some Bitcoin, so that way if this does take off, which it is going to take off, and it already has, the price of Bitcoin has gone up, people are using Bitcoin more than ever. The fact is, you have some hedge in case this happens and your own currency continues to get devalued, or another country uses Bitcoin as a strategic weapon against you, or strategic reserve. So that way if you attack them, you can't get one of their precious resources. Right? You can steal a country's gold, you can steal a country's technology, but can you steal their Bitcoin? No. So a lot of countries are starting to hedge this way, and that's why you should take a look at it. The wealthy elites, the billionaires, the politicians pivoted, right? They are pivoting towards Bitcoin. Of course, if you do want to trade crypto, there's the link to BTCC underneath the video. There's some special sign-up bonuses. Thank you so much. Let me know your thoughts on this, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.